In a wealthy Chicago suburb, two prominent citizens are murdered in broad daylight.
The fact that there was a double murder in that community, I think, was a pretty dramatic shock to a lot of folks.
Their only son barely escapes.
A half an inch. A half an inch is why Mark Levine is alive.
When investigators finally turn up a suspect, they discover a family drama with a deadly twist.
So this was unique, this was different, this was out of the ordinary.
Then, in a small southern town, a woman on her way to work is lured off the road, robbed, and killed.
It was a shocking crime. It was a high-profile, well-publicized case from the very beginning.
And when they find a suspect, it only gets worse.
We were trying to understand the magnitude of what we had just taken in.
November 9th, 1989. Police in Munster, Indiana, respond to an early morning 911 call at the home of wealthy entrepreneur Donald Levine and his wife, Marcia. Inside, they confront a shocking mystery. Both have been shot.
Marcia Levine was shot in the left chest area and had received another wound, a close wound, to the side of her head. Donald Levine had been shot once in the left chest and once to the side of his head.
Marcia is dead. Donald is still alive, but dies at the hospital. The Levine's 24-year-old son, Mark, home for a visit, is also sent to the hospital. He's bleeding from a severe blow to his head, a blow hard enough to fracture his skull. Mark tells investigators he was attacked by the same man who shot his parents.
He pointed a gun at me, and he didn't shoot me, but he hit me with it.
Got a package for Levine.
The first confrontation with the gunman happened in the garage, outside in the driveway.
The man who approached Mark claimed to be delivering a Federal Express package, but he struck Mark as odd.
He became suspicious because the guy didn't wear a uniform, nor did he have a vehicle that had markings of FedEx on it.
The man asked Mark Levine to sign a paper on a clipboard, then said he had the wrong package and left.
Mark Levine then went into the house.
You guys expecting a package?
No.
No? Delivery guy outside needs you to sign for it?
Told his mother what had just transpired and wondered if they had anything that was going to be delivered that they had knowledge of.
The man returned, this time to the front door, and handed Mark the Federal Express package. He then pulled out a gun and ordered him down on the ground.
Now, get down.
Please.
As Mark
Sit down.
complied, he hit him hard with the gun, momentarily knocking him unconscious.
All he remembers is that a few seconds later, he heard his mother shout out and he heard a gunshot.
Mark regained consciousness and weaved across the yard toward the elementary school across the street.
A lot of activity at that intersection because of parents dropping off their children or children actually walking from their residences to the school.
They saw Mark come running out of the house, and he was bloodied. He was bleeding from a head wound, and they just thought something had happened. They didn't know what at that time.
30 seconds later, they saw a gunman come out the front door.
It was a big, burly guy that looked like kind of a Grizzly Adams type.
The gunman started to run after Mark, then appeared to change his mind and ran to a car parked on the street.
As he's going to get in the car, he slams his fist down on the car and says, like, damn.
When he drove off, a couple who had just dropped off their child at school decided to follow him.
They saw that something happened and figured, well, let's follow this guy and see where he's going. And then he stops, pulls in the driveway, points the gun at the people that are following him.
Terrified, the couple stopped pursuing him. But they are able to describe his car to investigators, a blue Chevy Corsica. Investigators hope tracing it will lead to the mysterious bearded gunman. Looking for more clues, investigators go over the crime scene at the Levine house.
There didn't appear that any ransacking had been done. There didn't appear that this is a burglary that went bad or some other home invasion type of crime that went bad.
For even seasoned investigators, this case is out of the ordinary.
Crime scene told me the person responsible for these murders was intent on killing these people. There was no evidence other than 4 shots having been fired inside the house. All 4 shots were on target. So the intent and the purpose of the killer was just that. He wanted those people dead.
Then they find the Federal Express envelope delivered by the gunman, right where Mark dropped it. Inside, a crucial clue, a map.
The map was a Chicago metropolitan map on which Midway Airport was circled.
The map also has a route marked on it, from the airport to Munster. It is another highly revealing clue.
Well, why would you need a map unless you were coming from outside the area? And that was a piece that didn't fit a normal burglary, a normal home invasion.
Then, autopsies reveal more vital information. The killer used special bullets, practically guaranteed to kill.
Unique bullets, which were called glazer safety slugs, that upon impact with the body, the bullet basically explodes and expands into the body a whole bunch of small BBs.
Devastating wound. Devastating. We knew initially that this was not the normal murder. And when we found out about the glacier slugs, we knew we had a hit on our hand.
Why would anyone put a contract out on Donald and Marcia Levine? The answer leads to a very unusual suspect, but that's only the beginning. Investigators trying to find the killers of Donald and Marcia Levine are sure they're not dealing with a typical home invasion robbery. Nothing was stolen, and the gunman used bullets meant for maximum damage. This is a hit, pure and simple, a professional job. Police are determined to find out who is behind it.
I got a blank check from my boss at the time, literally telling me, whatever you got to do to solve this case, do it.
Until they know more, investigators keep their belief the murders were a hit to themselves and concentrate on identifying the shooter. Fortunately, there are plenty of witnesses to help them put together a composite sketch of the delivery man Mark Levine saw.
Mid to late 30s, male white, over 6 foot, without any distinguishing marks on his face, without glasses, having a full beard, and barrel-chested.
Police immediately released the sketch to the media and a stunned community.
The fact that there was a double murder in that community, I think, was a pretty dramatic shock to a lot of folks.
Murders in this affluent Chicago area suburb are almost unheard of.
I would suspect there hadn't been a murder in Munster, Indiana, certainly in that neighborhood, you know, for a long time. So that was a major event.
There was a prominent businessman, and it happened in broad daylight and first thing in the morning.
Investigators' best bet is finding the getaway car. If the gunman came from the airport, he probably rented it. But IDing the blue Chevy Corsica he drove is tougher than investigators expect.
A late model Chevy Corsica. Could we find a more common vehicle?
All we need is one, just one.
I didn't want the 1,500 blue Chevy Corsicas. I'm just looking for one that was rented in this specific time frame.
We then subpoenaed every car rental corporation who did business at Midway and said, during this time frame, we want all blue Chevy Corsicas. Tell us who rented them.
While some detectives track down the killer's getaway car, others try to figure out why anyone would want to kill Donald and Marcia Levine. The obvious motive is Donald's money.
From our investigation, he had accumulated a wealth of approximately $25 million.
Their first suspect is the Levine's only son, Mark, wounded in the attack.
One of the people who had a monetary gain would have been the son.
Why did he get to live when the other 2 people didn't? You know, there was questions. There was like, why? What caused this? This is kind of fishy, you know.
Authorities theorize Mark Levine might have hired someone to kill his parents. But Mark appears to have had a great relationship with both his mother and father.
They had a loving, close relationship. The parents worshiped the ground he walked on.
The sun didn't set on Mark. Mark was their pride and joy.
And he is clearly grief-stricken.
The kid's devastated. I mean, the epitome of absolutely devastated.
Even more convincing, the blow Mark took to his head was too serious to be faked.
A half an inch. A half an inch is why Mark Levine is alive. If he would have been struck any harder or in a slightly different location on the head than he was, he also would have died.
In fact, Mark is still in fear of his life.
Mark almost immediately went into hiding. He did not attend his parents' funeral. Under advice of his bodyguards and other family friends, they felt it was too dangerous for him to expose himself.
Mark Levine is ruled out, but if not him, then who? Investigators explored Donald Levine's professional life. He had widespread business interests, including real estate ventures in Illinois, California, and Arizona. Maybe someone had a murder-sized grudge.
Donald was a very hard-charging, direct, candid, people would probably say at times, a bully of a businessman.
745 means 745.
I think Donald pretty much irritated quite a few people on the business level to the point of disgust.
Elka Flavel worked in one of Donald Levine's businesses. It was a Phoenix, Arizona-based real estate and property management company run by his younger brother, Robert. His employees often saw evidence of Donald Levine's hot temper.
When he took off in his rants and raves, there was no speaking to him. There was no logic involved whatsoever. It was just a tyrant, and he went off and called you everything but human. I certainly overheard many times when he pretty much ripped somebody's face off.
To find out more, investigators contact Donald Levine's brother, Robert.
Bob was in Phoenix, and he immediately flew from Phoenix, to Chicago, and then came to Munster, Indiana.
Robert Levine spends several hours with investigators trying to help.
I wanted to know as much as he knew about who possibly could be behind his brother and sister-in-law's murder.
Robert Levine tells authorities many people might have wanted his brother dead, including some very unusual possible suspects.
He brought up organized crime in New York. He brought up bad blood between others who had done business with Donald Levine in the past and was jealous of his success.
The mafia? Business associates? Was Donald Levine really a target of mob violence or professional envy? Perhaps his success came at the price of his life.
So now you have to start looking at the big picture and see, is there anybody over there that the Levines were having problems with?
During the next weeks and months, investigators put in thousands of hours. They run down every tip they can find and continue checking out every rented blue Chevy Corsica in the area.
There was 5 guys working on this case, 16, 18 hours a day for months.
Nothing pans out. Not the car, not the mafia, not the business associates.
We were unable to substantiate any of that.
Then one routine phone call spins the case in a whole new direction.
Stribiak gets the phone call from the car rental company saying, okay, we've got 5, 6, 7 Corsicas rented in this time window that you guys have made an inquiry about.
Investigators run through the names on the rental agreements. One of them jumps out.
Well, one of the names is Robert Levine.
Robert Levine? Donald's younger brother? It immediately gets their full attention.
We knew Robert Levine was supposedly in Phoenix. And Robert Levine was Donald's and Marcia's brother and brother-in-law. No way should have been renting a car at 11 o'clock the night before her murder.
Then they realize that though the name, address, and credit card number on the rental agreement belong to Robert Levine, one item doesn't fit.
It's all of Robert's information until it got down to that one line where it said, your home phone. And whoever it was gave a number that wasn't Robert Levine's home phone. They do a check on the phone number there and find out that phone number is to a Bruce McKinney.
It's a name they've never heard.
As soon as we find his name, we pull out an arrest record, Find out he's arrested for possession of marijuana with the intent to distribute. Pull up his mugshot.
Bruce McKinney is a bearded, burly man, exactly like the one witnesses described seeing at the Levine house the day of the murders.
I'm saying to myself, we got a match. It's him.
When they check McKinney's fingerprints against those found on the Federal Express package left at the crime scene, it's another match. Bruce McKinney is the killer. Investigators believe they have tracked down the hitman who executed Donald and Marcia Levine. Bruce McKinney's fingerprints match those left on the Federal Express envelope, and his looks match a composite sketch. But McKinney is a very unusual suspect.
He had never been involved with any violation of law other than that possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. He had no history of family violence, no history of assault and battery, of attempted murder, anything involving weapons. So this, for his character, was out of the norm, out of the ordinary, unusual.
Why would McKinney suddenly graduate from marijuana to murder? And why would he want to kill the Levines?
There was no connection between Bruce McKinney and Donald and Marcia Levine. There just wasn't. It makes no sense why somebody from Phoenix, Arizona would fly halfway across the country to commit this brutal murder.
Then investigators discover that though McKinney has no connection to Donald and Marcia, he works for someone who does. Donald's brother, Robert Levine, whose credit card he used to rent the car he drove the day he killed Marcia and Donald.
And the more we got into it, the more we knew that the two of them had a personal relationship. The two of them went behind closed doors and had discussions.
Could the two have been plotting the murders of Donald and Marcia Levine?
Who would benefit from their deaths? If all three were dead, it'd be Robert Levine.
Then investigators discover that only a few months before the murders, Robert Levine had a falling out with his brother Donald.
In the summer of 1989, Donald Levine went to Phoenix and looked over the books and found, to his knowledge, that his brother Robert had embezzled in excess of $250,000 from the corporation that they held together.
My own brother!
I did not steal from you, Don.
Donald was the type of person that would never stand for that. Certainly never from an employee, absolutely not from a family member. So, and Donald lost it.
Don, you're gonna regret this!
Donald demoted his younger brother, stripping him of partnership in their company. From then on, Robert Levine was just another employee.
Robert was a big image person. He was devastated. Donald told anybody and everybody who would listen that my brother Bob's a crook. He stole from me, and now he isn't running my business.
It was also a severe financial blow.
It was strictly on salary. Therefore, Robert Levine's standard of living, if you will, decreased dramatically.
Right from the beginning, investigators suspected whoever killed the Levines was a hired gun. Now they are certain they know who hired him.
The dominoes started falling, and it led right back to him. No one else had the ability, the opportunity, or the motive. And he was able to persuade Bruce McKinney into doing the crime for him.
McKinney seems to be the ideal hitman. He had often bragged to Levine about being a Vietnam veteran who had killed many times before.
He had told Robert that he was a Green Beret in Vietnam, that there was a price on his head by the Viet Cong, and that he was a highly decorated war veteran.
In fact, McKinney was never in combat and had never killed anyone. But he agrees to do the hit anyway.
The right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Authorities arrest Bruce McKinney and Robert Levine the same day. Both refuse to talk. But without McKinney's confirmation, they have no proof against Levine, and he is released. Shortly afterward, Levine disappears.
Once Robert started going on the run, Bruce knew he was out there. basically in the wind, swinging. And he knew that he had to save his own skin because Robert wasn't going to save him. Robert was too interested in himself.
Bruce McKinney has no choice. He makes a deal and tells authorities exactly what happened. Shortly after Robert Levine's demotion, he contacts Bruce McKinney.
Robert told Bruce that if Bruce McKinney was willing to kill Donald, Marcia, and Mark, that he would make him a millionaire.
Police now know exactly how Robert Levine's deadly plan went down. Bruce McKinney flies to Chicago. Using Robert Levine's credit card, he rents a blue Chevy Corsica and drives to the home of Donald and Marcia Levine.
He doesn't pull into the driveway. He pulls up on the street so he can get out of there quickly.
Mark Levine happens to be outside in the garage. Bruce McKinney approaches him with a package, then leaves, saying he has the wrong one. A few moments later, McKinney returns.
At this point in time, Mark is in the house, opens the door, and Bruce hands him the package and then pulls the gun and confronts him.
Get down, get down. What?
Wow. McKinney forces Mark Levine down, then knocks him unconscious.
He was a nervous wreck. So he was making bad decisions, at that point in time.
He wanted to immobilize him so that once he got done with the Marcia Levine and Donald Levine, he could come back and kill Mark Levine.
But when Mark is hit, his scream alerts his mother.
Marcia came storming around the corner, yelling. And Bruce was startled by it, turned, and fired off the first shot.
The noise alarms Donald, and he runs to find his wife.
Donald comes barging out of the bathroom, and he shoots him in the side of the head, and then shoots him in the side of the chest. Immediately turns around, goes back toward the front. Marcia is still struggling to get up, and he shoots her underneath the chin.
The brutal killings are quick, but by the time McKinney gets back to the front door, Mark Levine is gone. Now that investigators have Bruce McKinney's confession, they build a solid case against Robert Levine. It's just a matter of time before he is brought to justice.
Being a fugitive is very difficult. It takes resources, it takes contacts. You're always looking over your shoulder. It's a very, very difficult life.
Too difficult for Robert Levine. After 2 months on the run, Robert Levine turns himself into authorities in California and is charged with several counts involving murder for hire across state lines. Coming up next, when a helpless woman is shot and robbed, her killer turns out to be a suspect so unusual, no one is more shocked than the cops. April 16th, 1993, Gwinnett County, Georgia. When employees arrive for work at a local muffler shop, a brown Lincoln Town Car is parked in the driveway.
The second guy that came in had actually seen somebody leaned over and he thought they were drunk.
When they get closer, they see blood and realize the woman behind the wheel isn't drunk. She's dead.
She was slumped over to her right. It was clear that she had been shot twice in the head. You could see the entry wounds in the back of her head, and there was blood spatter in the car.
Police are on the scene in minutes. Suicide is not a possibility. There's no weapon anywhere, and there's evidence of a robbery.
It was also obvious in looking at it that something had been removed from her lap because there was a void in the blood spatter. The window was rolled down just a short distance. As I recall, we instantly recognized it was a murder, and we believed it was a robbery, and so we began to trace back our victim's footsteps the night before.
The murder victim is 53-year-old Emma Jean Thompson, known as Jean. She lives at a nearby trailer park and was on her way to work on the night shift when the attack occurred.
It was a shocking crime. It was a high-profile well-publicized case from the very beginning. You know, it was not the kind of thing that happened in Gwinnett County.
While detectives are still doing their initial investigation, Jean's only son, Michael Thompson, turns up at the crime scene to check on his mom.
A friend of hers had come back by and saw her car sitting there that morning and had contacted Michael and told him where his mother's car was, and that is why he had come over to the scene.
It was up to Jack Burnett to tell him that his mother had been murdered.
He seemed to be very concerned about what had happened, but not overly devastated.
Because of that reaction, Michael Thompson immediately becomes a person of interest.
Where were you, Michael?
I was at home. When you figure that 85% of all homicides are committed by someone who knows the victim, you start looking at those folks first.
Their interest intensifies as they dig deeper.
We learned that he had been named as a suspect in a theft that Emma Jean Thompson had reported about 3 weeks before her murder.
Jean Thompson had recently inherited $14,000, but about a month earlier, she had gone to the bank and withdrawn it all in cash.
She had become involved in a financial problem with a timeshare. She feared that she was going to be sued and that money might be secured in that lawsuit, and so she withdrew that money and brought it home.
Shortly afterward, she discovered half of it had simply disappeared. $7,000 gone.
She called the police and said that she had been the victim of a burglary.
Phoenix police, ma'am? Yes, I have had some money taken from my home. Was it a burglary? Well, my back door, the screen door, it has been cut.
A Gwinnett County police officer, Mike Chappell, responded to the call.
Jean Thompson.
Hi, Miss Thompson. How are you?
Thank you so much for coming. Come on in.
Some things about the crime don't seem to add up.
The screen and door on her house hadn't been cut. There was no sign of forcible entry.
Most significant, whoever took the money left the other $7,000 behind.
You still have quite a bit of money in there.
I had $14,000. It took half.
Officer Chappell concluded her son Michael had taken the money.
No self-respecting burglar in Buford, Georgia is going to take half the money and leave half the money, which concerned us and made us think that, you know, the son probably took part of the money.
So, did you know about your mother's money?
Yeah. Some sources of information that we received on Michael Thompson suggested that he may have had some financial problems, and of course living in the home made him, if she didn't take it, then it's probably going to be him.
Though Officer Chappell was certain Jean Thompson's son was the thief, there was nothing he could do.
He felt like the son had taken the money. Miss Thompson, he didn't feel like really wanted to prosecute.
This was her only son, and I think she was torn about having him arrested.
Police learned that ever since Jean discovered the theft of half her inheritance, she carried the rest of it around in her purse. Now the purse is gone, and Jean is murdered. Detectives theorize Michael Thompson may have gone after the rest of his mother's money.
But we established pretty quickly where he was at the time of the murder, and he had basically an airtight alibi.
Michael Thompson is cleared of having any connection to his mother's murder. But if not him, then who? Perhaps it was a robbery of opportunity. One of her tires is flat. Maybe Jean pulled off the road into the muffler shop after it blew out and was attacked by a quick-thinking thief. Or maybe somebody deliberately knifed her tire to make sure she'd pull over.
The tire that was deflated did not appear to have been a blowout or anything.
The very first night after Jean's body is discovered, detectives set up a roadblock, hoping to find people who had traveled that same way the night before.
Good evening. I am Detective Klein. This is Officer Mills. Can I ask you a couple of questions?
Somebody had to see something. Then, within hours, they discover several witnesses and a clue that may break the case wide open. Gwinnett County police officers are running a road check, hoping to find anyone who might have seen who robbed and killed Jean Thompson the night before.
We wanted to talk to people who may have been up and down that road on the previous night and to see what, if anything, they may have seen.
Did you happen to see anything unusual?
No, I didn't.
No? Okay.
The road checks started to create the window of time when we knew something had happened. We had people who had driven by earlier between 6 and about 9:30 who didn't see anything. We had people who drove by there at 10:15 and saw only Emma Jean Thompson's car in the driveway.
Whatever happened occurred between 9:30 and about 10:15. During that period, several people reported seeing something very specific, what looked like a police cruiser parked behind Jean's Lincoln.
I think it was a town car.
The consistent thing that they began to develop was they came up over the hill, they saw blue lights, they saw a police car, and the Lincoln was parked in front of the police car.
Maybe Jean was pulled over for a traffic violation before she was killed. If so, there should be a record of it, but finding it is a big job. The traffic stop could have been made by any one of more than a half dozen different law enforcement agencies in the area.
We checked with other agencies, with the Sheriff's Department, with the State Patrol, and we were quickly able to eliminate any of them as being in that area. Unfortunately, we didn't have anybody of record on a traffic stop there.
Is it possible Jean Thompson was robbed and killed by somebody impersonating a cop? If so, it fits the evidence perfectly. From their first minutes at the crime scene, detectives noticed certain details that could indicate Jean had been pulled over.
The car's cut off the ignition's on because she has power windows. She has to let the window down. And she's still seat belted into the car.
And it becomes clear that what witnesses saw was a genuine Gwinnett County patrol car parked behind Jean's car that night.
Gwinnett County drove very distinctive patrol cars at that time. They were white with a big yellow stripe and a Gwinnett County shield on the door.
So why is there no record of any Gwinnett County officer stopping Jean Thompson that night?
We know that sometimes police officers will make a brief stop and not go out on the radio. They're not supposed to do that. It's against the policy, but sometimes they'll do that. And we hope that we could identify that officer with hopes of gaining information as to what they may have seen.
Investigators also talked to Jean's close friend, Dolores Burrell. Officer Mike Chappell's name comes up.
And so, who else did she see that morning?
I think there was an officer that came by.
They discover that Officer Chappell had continued to investigate the robbery and had stayed in touch with Jean.
He kept telling Mrs. Thompson that he was working the case, that he was going to try and run a bluff on Michael Thompson to get him to return the money.
He's the only one that had access, the opportunity, and he knew where it was. Don't worry, we're going to take care of this.
Chappell even followed Jean occasionally as she went to work or did her errands.
She had seen him sort of in the neighborhood, and that in fact he had sort of shadowed her to work one time, and she said she felt very like he was a guardian angel kind of watching out for her.
Then, new witnesses suggest he might have been watching over her the night of the murder.
We developed at least 2 witnesses who saw a large officer in a raincoat leaning either into the window or near the window or approaching the car. And so we began to think about some of the larger officers in the department who were in the Northside precinct.
There are only a few Gwinnett County officers who fit that description. At 6'6", Mike Chappell, Jean's guardian angel, is one of them. But if he was the one witnesses saw next to her car, why hasn't he mentioned it? The investigation is moving fast. At the same time, some detectives are looking at all the large Gwinnett County officers. Others are talking to Jean's friend, Dolores Burrell, and getting very disturbing information.
He was very insistent that they meet that night and that she bring the money with her.
On the night of the murder, Chappell had contacted Emma Jean Thompson and had asked her to meet him, that he had worked out a way to recover her money, and that the key was she was to bring the remaining $7,000 with her, and that they would compare money wrappers, and then he could show conclusively who had taken her money.
For investigators, it's a mind-blowing revelation. Chappell's actions seem completely outside the bounds.
There was just total silence. And although I'm sure all of us were thinking the same thing, we were trying to understand the magnitude of what we had just taken in.
There's only one logical explanation. Mike Chappell killed Jean Thompson and stole $7,000 from her.
It was a very shocked, a very stunned few moments in disbelief that it was one of our own.
A dirty cop. It's every investigator's worst nightmare. But like any other case, they need proof, not just suspicion.
All right, thanks, Bob.
It was a case of making sure that we had all of our ducks in a row, that we had done everything humanly possible, not only to prove that we were right that this was him, but had followed any avenues available to us to prove that he didn't do it.
Mike Chappell is a very unusual suspect. The last person anyone would suspect of robbing and murdering a trusting woman. A woman who thought he was her guardian angel.
Mike was a very popular officer. A lot of officers liked him, they respected him. He had created this sort of larger-than-life persona. He was a well-known police officer in the Buford community. As common practice, he was the first officer through a door in a high-risk entry. He styled himself like the Terminator. He wore his hair cut that way. He wore the gargoyle sunglasses. Of course, he was huge. He was a big bodybuilder. And when he was dressed out in a SWAT uniform, he was a pretty imposing figure.
But as they take a harder look at him, they discover very strange behavior. For instance, it is common knowledge that he is always short on money.
Chappell owned a gym in Buford. He was a bodybuilder. He was having some financial problems. We were able to discover that. He was about to be audited by the Internal Revenue Service.
Yet he suddenly seemed to have plenty of cash.
3 or 4 days after the murder, he had paid off some bills using $100 bills. He had bought some T-shirts for his gym using $100 bills. And he had had his car cleaned and detailed and paid for it using a $100 bill.
When investigators check his cruiser, they find more $100 bills tucked into a notebook.
The Federal Reserve was able to go back and research where those $100 bills had been delivered to, and they had been delivered to Imogene Thompson's bank.
The most damning evidence came from the police station itself.
We recovered his rain jacket out of his locker in the precinct, and it appeared to have blood, high-velocity blood spatter along the right sleeve.
High-velocity blood spatter would be from an explosion or close proximity to an explosion or bullet impact on a gunshot wound. It was important to show that he had fired a gun and shot something at this point in time.
And on the armrest of his cruiser, more blood.
We had that blood tested and compared to the blood of Imogene Thompson, and there was a DNA match. And that was sort of the clincher, key piece of evidence.
Mike Chappell is arrested and charged with murdering and robbing Gene Thompson.
When we charged him with the murder, it sent a shockwave through the whole law enforcement community in Gwinnett County. The sheriff's department basically supported Chappell. They didn't believe that he could have committed this crime. And the police department, there were a number of officers who said there's no way he couldn't have committed the crime.
There was a lot of anger in the department directed toward the detectives. In that case, disbelief, shock. They were angry that we would make such an allegation.
But the evidence is overwhelming.
Unfortunately, the harder we worked at trying to prove he didn't do it, the more evidence we found to lead us to believe he did.
Though Chappell denies everything, police are certain they now know what happened. Gene Thompson calls the police about the theft of her money, and Officer Mike Chappell responds.
My name is Officer Chappell.
I think he pretty early on decided that this might be an opportunity for him to take that money.
He follows her, scoping out her habits.
She thought that he was following her to make sure she was okay. He was looking for a place to kill her.
Okay, so I need to meet you.
When his plan is ready, he tells Jean to meet him with the rest of the money. She leaves her home about 9:30. Chappell secretly follows.
About 10 o'clock, he fell in behind her as she drove to work and turned on his blue light. I think at that point she believed she was being pulled over.
Passers-by pay little attention to a police cruiser pulling up behind her.
You think about that, and it really is sort of a brilliant way to look at it, because 9 out of 10 people who drive by and see a police car behind a civilian car, they look away. They don't see it, really. All they see is the blue light, and they look down at their own speedometer.
Chapel gets out and walks toward her. Jean probably doesn't yet realize it's the man she calls her guardian angel.
She brought her purse over and put it in her lap, just like anyone else would, to get her driver's license.
When she rolls down her window, Chapel pulls out his gun and shoots her twice.
That is the way Gwinnett County police officers at that time and now are trained to shoot. 2 gunshots. Boom, boom.
Chapel grabs Jean's purse with the $7,000 in cash, leaving a gap in the blood pattern, and quickly knifes her tire.
The tire was flattened by a single puncture of a knife, directly in and directly out.
Then he walks away. Nothing more than a cop leaving a routine traffic stop.
I just think he thought he was smarter than us. And I don't think he had any concept of how many people had traveled up and down that street. I don't think he had any concept of how many friends that Miss Thompson had and how she had discussed all of these events with them. And I don't know that he thought that we would uncover it, but we were very thorough, and we did.
In 1995, Chapel is tried on charges of murder and armed robbery.
As to count 1, murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty as charged.
Mike Chapel is convicted of malice murder, armed robbery, and possession of a firearm in the commission of a felony. He is sentenced to life in prison. He has appealed 3 times and been denied every time.
He still asserts his innocence. He will never admit his guilt. I think Chapel will go to his grave denying his involvement in it.
You're following breaking news just into our newsroom in the 4 o'clock hour. In the last hour, from the St. Joseph County Courthouse, 27-year-old Kamari Wright was just found guilty of voluntary manslaughter in the shooting death of 32-year-old Kaylin Davidson. So here's her photo. The shooting happened last year. Prosecutors originally charged her with murder and voluntary manslaughter. According to court paperwork, prosecutors say Wright killed Davidson after they got into a fight at Linden Grill. They say Davidson was running away when Wright shot her. Davidson was the mother of a 5-year-old who was accidentally shot and killed a month prior to this shooting. Is that all you care about is Pupple? No, not really. Well, jag shouldn't see Pupple what's tomorrow. Jay. Glad people see you here. Turn around. It's called a pineapple. Put it all under the seats. If I feel like I can't live without my son, what do one of you bitches think I'll do to y'all? Those weren't empty threats from a grieving mother, they were a death sentence. Broadcast live on Facebook for 30 minutes while friends desperately begged viewers to stop feeding Kaylin Davidson information about online drama. But nobody listened. 2 days later, on May 17, 2022, she walked into the Linden Grill in South Bend, Indiana. Dressed immaculately from head to toe, she had violence on her mind and vengeance in her heart. What happened next would leave one woman dead on South Michigan Street and expose how social media beef can escalate into real-world bloodshed. This is the story of 5 days that destroyed 2 families forever. 5 days between burying a 5-year-old boy and his mother joining him in the grave. Welcome back to Shadows of Crime, where we dive deep into the cases that keep you awake at night. If this story grips you like it gripped me, smash that like button, share it with someone who loves true crime, and subscribe for more cases that reveal the darkest corners of human nature. Before she became a cautionary tale about grief and revenge, Kaylin Davidson was the kind of woman who lit up every room she entered. Born July 22, 1989 in South Bend, she carried herself with a confidence that turned heads and a style that made other women take notes. Friends described her as someone who was dressed fashionably from head to toe no matter the occasion, even on her worst days. Kaylin looked like she stepped off a magazine cover. At 32, she was building the life she'd always dreamed of, working as a medical assistant while enrolled in the clinical care intern program. She had her sights set on becoming a registered nurse. Her faith ran deep and her ambition ran deeper. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, creating a better future for her 2 sons. Those boys were her universe. Kylan Miller, her older son, and 5-year-old Kyler Jackson, who everyone called a mathematical genius. Kyler wasn't just smart, he was special, in that way that makes adults stop and stare when a kindergartner starts solving problems that challenge middle schoolers. Derek Jackson, Kyler's father, would beam with pride talking about his son's brilliance. Kaylin's inner circle was tight. These weren't just friends. They were her sisters, the women who knew her secrets and had her back through everything. They watched her transform from a party girl into a devoted mother who gave up drinking to be the parent her boys deserve. But even the strongest women have breaking points, and Kaylin's came wrapped in social media drama that should have stayed online. It started when Kimmery Wright laughed at a video showing Kaylin's family member getting beaten up. That disrespect ignited something primal in Kaylin. Months earlier, she and her cousin had jumped Kimmery at the mall, a moment of street justice that should have ended things. Instead, it was just the beginning. 2 grown women, both mothers, both with everything to lose, began acting like cast members on a reality show. The beef escalated through Facebook posts, Instagram stories, and whispered conversations that spread through South Bend like wildfire. What nobody realized was that this wasn't just drama anymore. It was building towards something deadly. April 30th, 2022, started like any other Saturday night. 5-year-old Kyler Jackson was spending the evening at his grandmother's house on Woodbine Way, probably showing off his latest math tricks or building something with his endless imagination. The house was full of family, the kind of chaotic, loving environment where kids feel safe to be kids. At 10:30 p.m., while adults chatted in the living room, a 9-year-old relative made a discovery that would shatter multiple lives forever. Hidden somewhere in that house was a loaded gun. A weapon the family didn't even know existed. In the hands of a curious child, it became an instrument of unthinkable tragedy. The gunshot echoed through the house like thunder. When the adults rushed to find the children, they discovered a scene that would haunt them forever. Kyler Jackson, the mathematical genius who could solve problems beyond his years, fighting for his life with a bullet wound that no 5-year-old should ever have to endure. The race to the hospital became a blur of sirens, prayers, and desperate hope. For 3 agonizing days, Kyler clung to life in critical condition while his family maintained a vigil that felt like holding their breath underwater. Derek Jackson, his father, later described those 72 hours as watching his heart break in slow motion. He was a mathematical genius, everybody's baby, Derek would say, his voice cracking with the weight of loss that no parent should carry. On May 4, 2022, just after midnight, the machines that had been breathing for Kyler went silent. The little boy who could calculate complex problems in his head couldn't calculate his way out of this one. Life support was removed, and shortly after, Kyler Jackson became another statistic in America's epidemic of preventable gun deaths. Derek Jackson's grief transformed into advocacy almost immediately. "Take precautionary steps," he pleaded with anyone who would listen. "Be an adult for these kids." The irony wasn't lost on him. His family didn't even own guns. "It was a gun in the house nobody knew about," he explained, his words carrying the weight of 1,000 what-ifs. 8 days later, on May 12, 2022, The community of South Bend gathered to lay Kyler Jackson to rest. The funeral was a sea of tears and balloons, of adults trying to make sense of senseless loss. Kaylin Davidson buried her baby boy that day, but she also buried a piece of her soul. The woman who emerged from Kyler's funeral wasn't the same Kaylin Davidson who had walked in. Grief has a way of rewiring people, turning love into something darker, more volatile. Within hours of laying her son to rest, Kaylin's Facebook became a window into a mind unraveling in real time. "Everyone back to work like they ain't killed my baby," she posted, her words dripping with accusation and pain. The blame wasn't just directed outward, it was eating her alive from the inside. She turned on her own mother, the woman whose house had become the scene of tragedy. In Kaylin's fractured logic, someone had to be responsible for the gun that shouldn't have existed. And maternal love twisted into maternal rage. But the community hadn't forgotten Kyler. A friend built a street memorial at the corner where the little genius used to play. Balloons dancing in the wind, candles flickering like prayers, and a handmade sign that read "Honk for Kyler." It became a pilgrimage site for a grieving neighborhood. Cars would slow down, honk their horns, and drivers would wave as if Kyler could still see them. The sound of those horns became the soundtrack of collective mourning. Then someone destroyed it. Carrie Briggs was the first to document the vandalism on Facebook. The memorial that had brought comfort to an entire community lay in ruins, and whispers immediately began circulating about who might have done such a heartless thing. Kaylin's friends suspected Kimmery Wright. The timing felt too convenient, the cruelty too personal. While there was no proof, the suspicion alone was gasoline on an already raging fire. Kaylin, who had given up alcohol to be a better mother, began drinking again. The bottle became her companion in those dark hours when grief felt too heavy to carry sober. Meanwhile, Kimmery continued her online provocations, making slick comments about Kaylin's parenting and pain. Each post was a fresh wound. Each laugh reacted a new insult to a mother who had already lost everything that mattered. The warning signs were everywhere. The drinking, the rage-filled posts, the way Kaylin's eyes had gone cold. Her friends could see the storm building, but they couldn't stop it. Grief had transformed their vibrant, fashionable friend into someone they barely recognized, someone capable of anything. The countdown to catastrophe had begun. May 15, 2022, 11:47 p.m. Kaylin Davidson went live on Facebook, and for the next 30 minutes the world witnessed a woman's complete psychological breakdown in real time. What started as another late-night rant quickly became something far more sinister, a public confession of murderous intent that would serve as evidence in a courtroom just over a year later. She was drunk, not tipsy, not buzzed, completely intoxicated, slurring her words while staring directly into her phone camera with eyes that had gone dead behind the pupils. The woman who once dressed immaculately from head to toe now looked disheveled, broken, like grief had physically aged her a decade in 2 weeks. "If them demons I'm fighting within myself, do you think I give a flying fuck about anybody else?" she asked her audience, her voice carrying a chilling matter-of-factness that made viewers' blood run cold. This wasn't the passionate anger of a grieving mother. This was something calculated, something that had been brewing in the darkness of her mind. The threats escalated with terrifying specificity. "My heart is starting to turn into anger. I'm going to hurt somebody," she continued, pausing to take another drink. "I know I can do it with my bare fucking hands. I don't need a weapon." The irony would later become apparent. She wouldn't need a weapon because her enemy would provide one. But it was her next statement that would haunt everyone who heard it. "I been went to jail and killed somebody before my baby funeral." The grammar was broken, but the message was crystal clear. Kaylin Davidson was announcing her intention to commit murder, and she was giving herself a deadline. The comments section became a digital battleground. Friends frantically typed messages begging her to stop, to get off social media, to call them instead of broadcasting her pain to the world. "Don't call Kaylin and tell her nothing else. She can't handle nothing extra," one friend pleaded, understanding that every piece of information about Kimari's latest online antics was pushing Kaylin closer to the edge. Others screenshot the threats, sharing them in group chats and private messages. Some laughed, dismissing it as drunk rambling from a grieving mother. Others felt genuine fear, recognizing the difference between empty threats and genuine promises of violence. But nobody, not one person, called the police. For 48 hours, those threats hung in the digital air like smoke from a gun that hadn't been fired yet. Kaylin's friends tried damage control, reaching out privately, attempting to calm the storm they could see building. May 16th passed, intense quiet, with everyone hoping the alcohol would wear off and sanity would return. It didn't. May 17th dawned with Kaylin learning that Kimari Wright would be at the Linden Grill that evening. The information came through the same social media networks that had been feeding the feud for months. This time, instead of posting another angry status or making another threat, Kaylin did something different. She got dressed perfectly from head to toe. The woman who had looked broken and disheveled during her Facebook Live meltdown transformed herself back into the immaculate version everyone remembered. She chose her outfit carefully, did her makeup flawlessly, and prepared for what she knew would be her final performance. The 30-minute Facebook Live hadn't been a breakdown, it had been a declaration of war. Tuesday, May 17, 2022, 9:45 p.m. The Linden Grill was buzzing with its usual dinner crowd, families finishing late meals, couples on date nights, regulars nursing beers at the bar. Nobody expected to witness an execution. Kaylin Davidson stepped through those doors looking like she was heading to a photo shoot, not a fight. Every detail was perfect. Hair styled flawlessly, makeup applied with precision, outfit coordinated down to her accessories. But her eyes told a different story. They swept the restaurant with predatory focus until they locked onto their target. Kimari Wright was sitting at a table, probably scrolling through her phone, maybe even checking the same social media platforms where she'd been taunting a grieving mother for weeks. She had no idea that death had just walked through the door wearing designer clothes and a smile that didn't reach those cold, calculating eyes. The surveillance footage would later show what happened next with brutal clarity. No hesitation, no words, no warning. Kaylin moved across that restaurant like a heat-seeking missile, and the first blow landed before Kimari even knew what was happening. The fight erupted with shocking violence. Tables overturned as the two women crashed into them, sending plates and glasses shattering across the floor. Other diners scrambled for safety, some pulling out phones to record, others rushing toward exits. The peaceful Tuesday evening had transformed into chaos in seconds. Multiple people tried to intervene: restaurant staff, other customers, anyone brave enough to step between two women who were fighting like their lives depended on it. But this wasn't a typical restaurant scuffle that could be broken up with stern words and separated parties. This was personal. This was blood. Then everything changed. During the struggle, Kimari Wright managed to reach for something that would shift the entire dynamic of the confrontation: a gun. In the middle of a crowded restaurant with families and children nearby, she drew a weapon that transformed a fistfight into a potential massacre. The moment that gun appeared, survival instincts kicked in. Kaylin and others immediately began fleeing toward the exit, their fight-or-flight response choosing flight in the face of lethal force. The restaurant that had been filled with the sounds of breaking glass and shouting voices suddenly echoed with something far more terrifying. The scramble of people running for their lives. But Kemery Wright wasn't finished. Instead of letting her attackers flee, instead of calling police or restaurant security, she followed them. The surveillance footage shows her pursuing the fleeing group toward the exit, gun in hand, with deadly intent written across her face. At the doorway, the threshold between the restaurant's interior and South Michigan Street, Wright made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She raised her weapon and fired multiple shots at people who were running away from her, people who no longer posed any threat. Kaylin Davidson collapsed on the pavement outside, her perfect outfit now stained with blood. The woman who had come for a fight had been cut down by bullets while trying to escape. Wright calmly walked back inside, sat down, and waited for police to arrive. The emergency dispatch center lit up like a Christmas tree. The advisor getting a lot of calls on it. Nobody's given us much of information as of yet, other than there was a fight that broke out at Linden Prill and a female was shot. Within minutes, South Michigan Street transformed into a war zone of flashing lights, sirens, and controlled chaos. Paramedics found Kaylin Davidson bleeding out on the asphalt, her designer outfit now a crime scene. They worked frantically, pushing IV lines, applying pressure, fighting against time and physics. But some wounds are beyond human intervention. The woman who had walked into that restaurant with murder on her mind was dying from multiple gunshot wounds, her perfectly applied makeup now streaked with tears and blood. Inside the Linden Grill, Kemery Wright sat with an eerie calmness that unnerved responding officers. No attempt to flee, no resistance during arrest. She handed over the weapon like she was returning a borrowed pen, her demeanor so casual that witnesses later described feeling disturbed by her complete lack of emotion. The ambulance race to Memorial Hospital became a desperate sprint against death. But by the time they wheeled Kaylin through those emergency room doors, her fate was already sealed. At 10:47 p.m., doctors pronounced her dead, adding another name to South Bend's growing list of homicide victims. Word spread through the community like wildfire, and Memorial Hospital's parking lot began filling with angry, grieving people. Kaylin's friends, family members, and supporters arrived in waves, their emotions raw and dangerous. Police requested backup, recognizing the volatile situation brewing outside the hospital walls. Chief Scott Ruskowski arrived at the scene looking like a man who had aged years in a single evening. South Bend had just witnessed its fourth homicide in 6 days, the 9th of 2022, and the weight of that violence was crushing the city's spirit. I don't know if I have any tears left. I don't know if, how many times that I can throw up. Pastor Kenneth Lee, who had become an unofficial spokesman for the city's trauma, captured the magnitude of the tragedy in a single sentence. 3 tragedies: Kyler, the nephew, and now Kyler's mom. The 9-year-old who had accidentally shot Kyler was now dealing with additional trauma, knowing that his actions had set in motion a chain of events that led to another death. Derek Jackson had lost his son and his son's mother within 2 weeks. 2 funerals, 2 graves, 1 shattered family. While Kaylin Davidson's body was still warm in the morgue, Kemery Wright was already crafting her narrative. Released on $100,000 bond and confined to house arrest with an ankle monitor, she did what any reasonable person facing murder charges would do. She stayed off social media and kept her mouth shut. Just kidding, she did the exact opposite. Wright's Facebook became a masterclass in how not to behave when you're facing life in prison. Her posts read like someone who had completely forgotten she'd just killed another human being, displaying a level of tone deafness that shocked even her supporters. Christmas 2022 brought perhaps her most offensive post. "It's a blessing to be home. Greatest gift was life and freedom." The irony was staggering. Celebrating her freedom while Kaylin's child would never see his mother again. As her trial date approached, Wright's confidence bordered on delusional. "We're walking in with heads held high and walking out with victory," she declared, as if she were heading to a high school football game instead of facing murder charges. Her posts attracted hundreds of comments from supporters who praised her strength and courage, apparently forgetting that strength doesn't typically involve shooting fleeing people in the back. The ankle monitor became a frequent topic of complaint. "Exactly 1 week and I will be free. No more ankle monitors," she posted, counting down to her trial like it was a vacation she'd been planning. The casual nature of her posts suggested someone who genuinely believed she'd done nothing wrong, that killing Kayleen Davidson was simply an unfortunate necessity. Her frustration with the legal system grew more apparent as trial approached. "This isn't about justice, it's about a conviction," she wrote, positioning herself as the victim of an overzealous prosecution rather than someone who had ended another person's life. The post garnered support from friends and family who echoed her sentiment, creating an echo chamber of self-righteousness. On the morning of her trial, Wright posted a final plea: "Trial day, please keep me in your prayers." The comments section filled with messages of support, people asking God to protect her and bring her home. Not one person mentioned Kayleen Davidson or her children. The contrast was jarring, Wright celebrating freedom and planning for the future. Her social media presence became evidence of something perhaps more damning than the shooting itself: a complete absence of remorse, empathy, or basic human decency. November 2023. After 18 months of legal maneuvering, plea negotiations, and courtroom drama, the moment of truth arrived. The St. Joseph County Courthouse buzzed with tension as families from both sides filled the gallery, separated by an invisible line of grief and anger. The prosecution had built what seemed like an airtight case, surveillance footage showing Wright following fleeing victims to the exit, multiple witnesses testifying that Kayleen and others were running away when the shots were fired. The Facebook Live threats that established premeditation on Kayleen's part, but also demonstrated that Wright knew violence was coming and chose to bring a gun anyway. But the legal system has a way of surprising everyone. In a stunning turn that left Kayleen's family reeling, the murder charge was dismissed. The judge ruled that while Wright's actions were inexcusable, they didn't rise to the level of premeditated murder. Instead, she was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, a conviction that carried significantly less prison time and reflected the court's belief that Wright had acted in the heat of passion. Even more shocking was the absence of a firearm enhancement. Despite discharging a weapon in a crowded public space, endangering dozens of innocent bystanders, Wright faced no additional penalties for the gun charges. The legal technicalities that allowed this outcome would later fuel community outrage and questions about Indiana's gun laws. December 4, 2023 brought sentencing day. The courtroom was packed as families prepared for closure that would never fully come. Derek Jackson delivered a victim impact statement that left hardened court reporters wiping away tears, describing the double loss of his son and his son's mother, the trauma inflicted on surviving family members, and the senseless nature of violence that could have been prevented. Wright's defense team painted her as a mother protecting herself, claiming she feared for her life during the restaurant altercation. They argued that Kayleen's Facebook Live threats proved she had come to kill, making Wright's response justified self-defense that had simply gone too far. The judge sentenced Wright to 10 years in prison, a term that could be reduced to under 7 years with good behavior. The prosecutor called it inadequate. There was no imminent threat when she followed fleeing victims and fired multiple shots. This homicide was not justifiable. Wright showed no visible emotion during sentencing. No tears, no apology, no acknowledgement of the lives destroyed by her actions. Her family celebrated in the hallway afterward, calling the sentence a victory and praising God for bringing her home soon. The appeals process began immediately. South Bend was hemorrhaging. Mayor James Mueller stood before cameras, his voice heavy with exhaustion. This isn't fate. This is something we can choose to do. We can come together as a community and put an end to this, but choosing seemed impossible when grief kept transforming into gunfire. The statistics painted a grim portrait. Indiana's loose gun laws made weapons easily accessible, while mental health resources remained scarce in urban communities. Kyler's death had been entirely preventable. Proper gun storage could have saved a mathematical genius. Instead, a curious 9-year-old found a loaded weapon that nobody knew existed. Social media had weaponized their conflict, turning code playground-level beef into deadly serious threats. The algorithm rewarded drama, punished peace, and amplified every slight until violence felt inevitable. Derek Jackson channeled his double loss into advocacy, speaking at community meetings about gun safety. The 9-year-old shooter received therapy, carrying guilt no child should bear. Churches and activists worked desperately to break cycles of trauma that seemed to regenerate with each tragedy, but South Bend kept bleeding. 2 families destroyed over social media beef that should have stayed online. The only innocent victim, 5-year-old Kyler Jackson, a mathematical genius who never got to solve life's biggest equations. Mother and son now rest together in South Lawn Cemetery, their headstones a testament to preventable tragedy. The unanswered questions linger. What if someone had called police after her Facebook Live threats? What if proper gun storage had protected Kyler? What if grief counseling had been available? Instead, we're left with empty graves and broken families. Proof that sometimes the most dangerous person is someone with nothing left to lose. And if stories like this keep you awake at night wondering how people can be so cruel to each other, you're exactly where you need to be. Hit that subscribe button, because Shadows of Crime doesn't do happy endings. We do truth.